Now we're going to use those trig ratios to actually solve for missing variables or missing angles in certain kinds of trig problems. So the first type of trig problem you could come across is when you have to find a side, knowing an angle and a side. So first thing I need to make sure you do is make sure whatever calculator you use, whether it's online or on your phone or the TI Nspire, that you are in degrees mode. And if you're having trouble putting your calculator in that, honestly, Google TI Nspire, go into degrees, and it's right there for you. So we're going to start by just doing 3 example problems with this. I'm sure you've done this before in geometry. So again, this is kind of just a review day. So for number 1, I'm going to do exactly what I said in our previous trig ratio review, and that's name the sides. But in this case, I'm going to name the sides that only have something written on. So for example, right here doesn't have anything. So I'm not going to label it. So I have my right angle, so I'm making 7 my hypotenuse. And I'm going to write that there. 70 is an angle that I have to work with, so I'm going to use this as my reference angle, my theta. So across from 70 is x. So I'm using a hypotenuse, or opposite. So I'm dealing with opposite and hypotenuse, and a trig ratio that has opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we're going to write sine down. And our reference angle is 70 degrees. So sine 70 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse. We set up our trig ratio just like we did before in this section of the notes. Now we're going to solve. So x is divided by 7. To get x by itself, we must multiply each side by 7. So that cancels. X is on this side, and we're doing 7 times sine of 70 degrees. If you plug that in the calculator correctly, you're going to get 6.58. These are decimals. I want you to round it to 2 decimal places when you're dealing with sides of a triangle. We're going to do the same thing for number 2. We're going to label all the sides that we have. Across from our right angle is our hypotenuse. 65 is going to be our reference angle. And 10 is right next to it, so that's our adjacent side. We have an adjacent side and a hypotenuse side, so that means we're going to deal with the cosine trig ratio. Our reference angle was 65 degrees. And it's adjacent over hypotenuse. So in this case, we have to get x by itself. Well, x is on the bottom, so we want to multiply, to get rid of this division, x by both sides. So that cancels. So we're left with x times cosine of 65 degrees equals 10. Well, we want x by itself. So if it's multiplied by something, we get rid of that by dividing, opposite operations. In my calculator, I'm going to type in 10 divided by cosine of 65. And I type away, and I get 23.66 for my side length. If you're not getting these numbers, you're not in degrees. My last example, again, same thing. Label. So here's my hypotenuse, but there's nothing there. Not labeling that then. Here's my reference angle, so this is opposite. And here's my adjacent side. I'm using opposite and adjacent, so that means I'm using the tan ratio. So tan of my reference angle, which is 42, equals opposite 10 over adjacent. Again, my x is on the bottom, so I want to multiply x by both sides. I have x tan of 42 equals 10. I need to get x by itself, so we undo multiplication by dividing. So x equals whatever 10 divided by tan of 42 is. Type that in the calculator, you get 11.11. So there's 3 examples of how to find a side when knowing an angle and a side.